Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Daraff, and I'm the Research Coordinator at the BC Centre for Employment Excellence. I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar today on sharing positive experiences of inclusive employment. We have the website URL up here if you want to follow along at home when we start demonstrating the map. We're really excited to be sharing this new website with you. Some of you may have already heard about it. You've been possibly contacted by my colleague Karen Lai here at the center about adding your stories or working with your clients to add their stories to the map. I'm joined by my colleagues who have been working with us here at the center on the map. The first is my colleague Rochelle Hull. She's an associate professor at UBC Okanagan in the School of Social Work, and she's also the co-director of the Center for Inclusion and Citizenship. And Rochelle has been really instrumental in this project. She was the one who approached us a few years ago with the idea for the map, and we were really excited to be working with her and the folks at the center on this project. The other presenter today will be John Corbett. John Corbett is a self-described map geek. He also works at UBC Okanagan in the Community and Culture and Global Studies department, and he's also heads up the SPICE lab, the Spatial Information for Community Engagement Lab. It's a long title, but it describes the kind of work that they do. Some really exciting stuff around some of these geospatial kinds of approaches, using tools like this to support communities in their own work. And John's been instrumental in developing the map and the website that you're seeing here, along with his colleague Nick Blackwell at UBC Okanagan. Before we get started in talking about what we're going to do today, I thought we would share a little video, one of the stories that was shared through the map. And this video is of Dale, and Dale is a self-advocate in Kelowna. And Dale has been involved in all stages of this project. He was a member of early focus groups and has been a consultant helping really shape the map and refine it. So it's a real pleasure for us to be able to show Dale's story because it really gives a good sense of the power of the stories that can be shared through this technology. As I'm pulling up the video, I just want to let you know that this is a new technology that we're experimenting with here at the center. It's basically a beta technology, and what we've understand is that it works well on Windows computers, but not necessarily on Mac machines. So if it doesn't work for you, don't worry. You'll still be able to hear the audio. You just may not be able to see the images.
What makes my job a good job is actually it's the people, isn't the coworkers that you work with. And I'll say it and I'll say it again too, actually. It depends on how the respect and dignity is trusted in that individual. Oh, what's important to me? Well, respect and dignity is the two major ones. Honesty and communication is another. That is, the money is okay, but it's not all about the money, it's about the interactions with customers as well. The opportunities is actually, it's a growth thing, right? Because yes, I'm actually a cafe attendant, but I'm also a cafe manager as well. So I kind of stepped up to a cafe manager, but as a cafe manager, I'm stepping up as a cafe manager to actually become a coffee master. So there is diversity, there is growth and expansion as well. You just gotta find it.
I hope you were able to hear that. If you weren't, we encourage you to go to the map, and John will be showing you how to find Dale's story, so you can pull that up and see his story for yourself. In terms of what we're going to be talking about today, we've split up the agenda into different parts, and all three of us will be sharing the screen. I'm going to give you a bit of a background and a purpose, and describe the purpose of the project. John's going to give, and Rochelle will give some, start with a demonstration of the website itself and talk more about the types of stories that we're encouraging people to add and our definition of inclusive employment. John will then get into an actual demonstration of the map, how to register, how to search for stories, and how to add your own stories there. And then Rochelle will talk about some of the research that they did looking at the early group of users who were instrumental in helping us shape the map by adding their stories and helping us learn how this technology can be used to promote inclusive employment. And then I'll come back and conclude by give you a sense of where we're at with the project, some of our next steps. And then we want to conclude with answering any questions that you may have about the project. I want to encourage you that at any time to ask us questions. We may not be able to answer them right away, but certainly you can use the questions feature on the toolbar that you have there to pose your questions to any of us. I have my colleague Greg here. He'll be collecting them, and then if it's a time-sensitive type of question, we'll jump in and ask it of the presenters. Otherwise, we'll hold off and wait to the end so that we can have a bit of a discussion time. You can use the raise hand feature if you like, if you want to ask your question using your audio, if you have that, if you have a microphone there available to you. What you can do is use that raise hand feature, and then Greg or I could unmute you one at a time to ask your question. And I just want to point out that we are recording today's session, and as we do with all our webinars here at the center, we post it on our website for those folks who are unable to make it today. In terms of the project, as I mentioned, Rochelle was the one who approached us with this idea way back when pretty soon after we started here at the center, with this idea to use this technology that she was that she saw her colleagues at John and Nick working on, and Rochelle had this idea that there was some real potential for this tool to be used to share the types of stories that you saw with Dale. Through a publicly available website, basically a place for us to pull all these stories together. So we started this as a partnership between the three of us, Spice Lab and CIC, and we approached the Ministry of Social Development and Social Innovation. We put in an application for a research and innovation grant, and we were pleased to be able to get access to that. And Community Living BC was also a funding partner on this project. They were very interested in this technology as well, and we're pleased with the support that they provided us. And for those of you who've gone to the various conferences lately, you'll see that this map is an important part of their Community Action Employment Plan. So we're pleased that this map is really getting out there and really meeting a number of needs that we see in the community. So we'll talk more, Rochelle will talk more about the specifics of the map, but I just want to give a bit of an overview in terms of the way that we shape this project. We really see this website as having two purposes. One is to create a space, an opportunity for self-advocates, service providers, family members, employers to share their own personal experiences and best practices of inclusive employment. This is an opportunity for us to hear from individuals themselves about what has made that experience positive, what kinds of supports were put in place, what was it like for the employer, what kind of impact are they seeing in their workplace, and that sort of thing. So a really opportunity to kind of shift things around where we're actually hearing from individuals themselves. And here at the center, we're really excited about the opportunity that then provides to other folks who are maybe looking for work or looking to support self-advocates in their employment journey. And we really see this as an important tool as people start adding their stories and viewing what's already been uploaded to encourage further employment opportunities, for inclusive employment. So this is a research study as part of the R&I fund. So we have some key research questions that we wanted to answer over the project's 2-year period. The first is looking at the factors that support and contribute to positive inclusive employment, and Rochelle will get into that further. We're really excited about some of the lessons that we can be drawing from these personal stories. Here at the center, our key stakeholder group is service providers, and we are really keen on looking at how these stories can inform service provision and potentially further innovations in that area. And then finally, We see this as a really important opportunity to engage employers. These are powerful stories. We have some employers who have already uploaded their stories, and to hear about what their experiences have meant for them and their workplace is it's a really excellent way for employers to be able to speak to each other and to have that peer-to-peer kind of sharing. So as I mentioned, the project was about 2 years in length. We started the development of the website over a 6-month period in early January, and I'm sure John will want to talk more about that. We took an existing tool that John and Nick had developed already, but it has been heavily customized for this project, and it's been growing and has been refined throughout the course of the project as more people start adding stories and as we start seeing the ways in which people add and view stories on the map. We then engaged a small group of self-advocates across BC, connecting through service providers to add their stories and reaching out to their networks to add their stories, so we can start to see exactly how this map could be used and what potential it has. That pilot period ended at the end of March, and then we've now publicly launched the website at that URL, mappinginclusiveemployment.ca, and you can go there and you can register and log in, and as John's giving you the demo, you can follow along yourself. We're now concluding the analysis phase for the pilot study, and we will be releasing a report soon describing what we've learned from the project and some of the lessons that you'll hear from Rochelle. And then a big part of my job over the last couple months has been going out and doing presentations like this, meeting with stakeholders and other potential partners, talking about the potential for this map, and thinking more about long-term sustainability. So we're still engaged in those discussions, and I'll talk a bit more about the next steps at the end of the presentation. I'm going to turn over the keyboard to Rochelle now, who will talk a bit more about the types of, who give you a bit of a demo of the map and the types of stories that we're looking to be added to it. I'll just unmute her for a second here. Go ahead, Rochelle.
So hello everybody. I hope you can all hear me and see my screen now. It's a real pleasure to be joining you today on the webinar, and thanks Sean for the introduction and the very clear background around the project. So in terms of kind of some of the background, just to add to this, at the Center for Inclusion and Citizenship, one of the key priorities of the CIC is promoting the full citizenship of individuals with intellectual disabilities, and research continues to show, repeatedly shows, that employment is one avenue for people to experience full citizenship in terms of their day-to-day lives. So, and in addition to that, employment is a key initiative and key priority of stakeholders within the community living sector. So in working closely with John Corbett at UBC Okanagan and seeing the technology that he's developed, as Sean said, we saw this as a really key tool to both promote employment, inclusive employment for self-advocates throughout the province, as well as sharing strategies and techniques to how to support individuals in finding inclusive employment. So when we started out on the project, one of the key things that was identified by stakeholders was the importance of creating messaging around what we mean by inclusive employment. And we want to be very clear that with this map, that what we're really interested in is highlighting and sharing stories where people are in paid positions. So if you look at the map, there's a tab that's titled Inclusion. And if you go to that page, in fact, it gives us a very clear definition of what we mean by inclusive employment. So we talk about inclusive employment as when individuals with a disability have paid jobs, when it's work in the community beside co-workers who don't have a disability. So we're not talking about sheltered workshops, for example. There are jobs where all employees doing the same job get the same pay. So the employee with a disability is not paid less money than those who don't have a disability. And there are also work environments where there's reasonable flexibility and support on the job, and that's available to all employees. So really it's about employees being included in the workplace and being paid appropriately for the work that they're doing. So that was a really key underlying value and principle of our project. Another key factor around our project was a commitment to community-based and participatory research methods. So a key emphasis of our project was to engage with self-advocates, to engage with individuals with intellectual disability, and work alongside of them and have them work alongside of us around developing the map. So we held focus groups with self-advocates around usability, so learning about how we could make the map more accessible for self-advocates throughout the province. And one of the key pieces that also came up as we were developing the map was we worked with artists with intellectual disabilities who in fact help us design some of the map markers, the map markers that John will talk about more as he goes through the demonstration of the map. So we asked self-advocates to draw images of what came to mind when they thought of the concept of a service provider or an employer or a family member. And so you can see on my screen here that it shows you some of the drawings that the self-advocates drew, and then how one of our research assistants, Emily Millard, how she used those drawings to develop the icons that are used on the map itself. So I guess the main point I wanted to highlight there is that we really wanted to work in a collaborative and participatory way with stakeholders throughout the province. And we have an advisory group that worked with us over the last couple of years in both designing the map as well as giving us some input around ethical considerations that we would want to consider as we went forward with the project. And so that advisory group was made up of 4 self-advocates, several service providers, some of whom also were family members. So that group of individuals have been really important and provided instrumental contributions throughout the development of the map. So I think that's good for me at this point, and I'm going to turn it over to John to show you the fun stuff of actually what the map's about and how it can be used.
Hey, can you all hear me? No, of course I can't respond to it. Hi, my name's John Corbett. Together with Nick Blackwell, we were the people who actually largely built the website that we're about to explain and the map technology which we use to share information. Now, I can't actually tell which one of my screens is being shared, so I'm just going to see if I can work that one out. Here we go. Right, so this is a picture of the map, I'm hoping, but again, Sean, can you just confirm to me that this is the right screen that's showing? Or Rochelle? Or no? Okay, I'm just gonna assume that it is the right screen. So you can see that we have a map here of British Columbia, and on the map there's a whole bunch of different map markers, which are these sort of individual markers that appear on the map, as well as these circles. And those circles are actually clusters of markers, because one of the problems is that if you end up with a map with like hundreds and hundreds of markers on it, it doesn't take long before you get what we call red dot fever, which is there's just too many markers to actually make sense of all the information. So that's why we use clusters. You can see also that the map in the background, we built on top of this one tool called Google Maps. But specifically the technology that we have designed sort of sits on top of that. It's not Google Maps, nor is it sort of an integral part of Google Maps, but in fact it's sort of like a special piece of software that sits on top of it. You can see that we've got a whole bunch of tools down here on the right-hand side that are sort of slightly different. So first of all, we can toggle the map into a full screen mode, or we can make it smaller again. It doesn't work that well given the context of the tiny screen that I'm actually showing you this on. We can also zoom into a particular area, perhaps just by clicking a map marker, which will zoom us into these 2 particular markers here. And then if we want to return to the default view, we just click on the home icon, and that takes us back to a full BC perspective as well. We also have a bunch of help files, or it's actually a short video clip which actually will explain to you how to actually use the map. I'm not going to select it right now, but what I would recommend if you're interested in using the map, that it's a super first point to start. By just clicking on this question mark, and then it'll open up a short video clip which will show you exactly how to use the website. So what are these map markers and what are these clusters that we've got here? If you select on a map marker, what will happen is the marker will open up and there'll be a whole series of different information inside of that marker. We can see that there's a title, there's a short description. There's also a couple of tabs up here. In fact, there's a comment related to this marker, and when I select that, it'll actually show me that, oh, in fact, the user, Shelley, showed us that, in fact, this marker was from Grand Forks and not from Fort St. John. So it's a great way to provide us with some sort of level of feedback. Also, you can see here that we've got a grey circle with a play sign in it, which means that there's a video behind it. So if I select that, what will happen is the video will then start to play related to that particular marker. Now, I'm not going to show it to you now, but again, you can come back later and look at the video. You can see as well at the bottom what we've got is, first of all, a tag. I'll explain tags in a little bit, and the ability to be able to take that marker, tweet it if you're a Twitter user, put it on your Google Plus site if you're a Google Plus user, or share it directly on your Facebook timeline. Now that's in place because we actually we didn't want to try to sort of create a completely new social media platform, but we wanted to be able to integrate the work that we were doing with the social networking that people already do. So it can then act as a sort of a complement to that. So that's basically how a map marker works. You can see that right now on the map we have close to, or probably over 100 map markers, and behind each marker there might be a video, an image, there might be text, a story, an audio file. And so you can see that there's a wealth of information in there. In fact, there's so much information in there that we need to think about, well, how are we actually going to make sense of this information, and how can we actually start to access this information in an interesting way? So first of all, we work with layers. So right now we have 5 layers, one for family, one for employers, one for service providers, government, as well as employees with disabilities, or the individuals themselves. And so we can certainly start to, first off, we can start to sort of like sort through the information around those different user types. So say, for example, I want to find just examples of employees with disabilities. What I'll do is I'll just turn the other layers off simply by clicking on them. So you can see as I turn these layers off, those markers will disappear from the map, and I only have examples of employees with disabilities left back on the map again. So I'll turn them back on again because I think it's kind of nice to have them all up there. So that's one way that we start to sort of, like make sense of the information. So another way is we've got these 2 tag clouds, we call them up here. We can sort the information or filter the information on the map on the basis of the job type. So if I click on this and I open up that tag cloud, I might want to find just examples, say, of people working in stores. I will then click simply on that particular word, and the map will then refilter itself and show just examples of people who work in stores. Let's have a look at Terry up here in Prince George. So we can see that Terry works in the back of Value Village, so we can see it's a store there. Okay, which is a really important thing because, we can start to, again, start to really try to look for very specific examples of that type of information. Now you can see that the map only has examples of people who work in stores. I want to reset it and go back to the default view. I just click this small blue button here on the left-hand side, Reset Filters, and the map will then go back to its default view. And now the other thing we have is themes, because as both Sean and Michelle said at the beginning, really importantly, what we're trying to do is to create a resource and for individuals with disabilities, but as well as for service providers, family members, and employers to start to learn from good examples, strategies out there already. And so we work together with our steering committee to develop a set of themes, and these themes basically refer to specific components or parts of that job finding and job keeping experience. The benefits of work, my first job, co-workers, keeping a job. Say, for example, I want to have a look at examples of my first job. Again, I just click on this filter, and the map will then refilter itself and just show me examples of that. Again, I'll reset the filter. You can play around with it with yourself. You play around with it yourselves, and you'll see quite soon that you can start to see how the map actually works. One more thing before I move on: the bigger the font size in the tag cloud, it means the larger the number of examples of that particular theme that's occurring on the site. So we can see starting a job and perhaps getting a job. We need to get more examples in those particular areas. So that's really sort of basically how the map works. So anyone coming in from the outside, any member of the public, they will be able to use the map in this way. One more thing quickly, how do we make sense of the map? Let me go back to the first example I showed you with Shelley. So you can see here that I can see the title of this particular marker is Shelley Ducos. What I'm going to do is show you quickly how the search function works as well. Because you might go in there searching for one particular thing. I'll type in Shelley's name, and you can see what will happen is that we will search through the database of map markers and find examples of that, and then if we click on it, then we'll zoom into that one particular map marker, and we're back where we started. And again, reset the filters, take us back to our default view. Okay, so now when the magic really starts to happen is when we actually log into the site, because then once we're logged in and we're registered users, we can actually add information to the site. So in order to do that, I've got to go back, click out of my full screen view. I've got to go to the login button up here at the top. You can see I can actually log in directly with my Facebook credentials or with my Google credentials, but I'm actually going to log in as a registered user just because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click now login. So, and you can see now I'm logged in. Now it's imagining that this is the first time that I've actually logged into the website. Now, of course, I've actually logged in many times before, but at the same time, if you were logging in the first time, because as Rochelle pointed out really nicely, this is a research project, so we're really interested in the sort of potential application and use of this tool. And because it's research, we have to inform very clearly people adding information to the map about what this research is actually about. But at the same time, we understood, well, we're going to be working with a lot of individuals with disabilities, so we want to make sure that this consent process, that we call it, is done in as straightforward a way as possible. So if I then click on the Watch the Consent video here, what will happen is that our consent process will be delivered to you in the form of a video clip.
This research is being conducted by researchers from the University of BC and the BC Center for Climate Action.
Now you can
we will be developing the website.
So you can see it's 10 minutes long, and I'm not going to run through that right now because I would run out of time. But at the same time, the first time you would log on, you would run through that consent process. You could also view a typed out version of that script as well, and that will explain exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what the implications of you being involved in this project actually are. It's an important part of the process. Now I've logged in, I've been through the consent process, and you can see first of all, one of the things that's different is I've got this little white marker here on the right hand side, drag and drop place mark. So what I can do is I can take this place mark, I can take them off the launch pad there, I can drop him right here in the middle of Jasper National Park, and as I let go of him with my mouse, you can see what will start happening is I will open up a wizard which will ask me to input a whole bunch of different types of information. So first of all, I need to select, who am I? Well, I'm going to be an employee with a disability today. So I select him. You can see the color stays like that. I click the next button. And then it'll ask me, oh, what's this story about? And this is how we populate the tag cloud. We select, oh, this is about, remember I said we need more getting to work. So this is about getting to work, and this is about my first job. And then I'm going to click the next button. I could then add in different media if I wanted. Let's see if I can find an image on my computer. So I've got to select an image, and that image can be anywhere on my computer. Here we go. Colorful background. That sounds like a nice one, although it's rather too large. So why don't I just find a slightly smaller one? Green background. Here we go. I'm going to select that. I'm going to upload it. And I can see now that I've got that image there. Click the next button. Tell my story if I want to in text, but you don't have to if you don't want to because there's a lot of typing perhaps involved. And then we click our submit button, and there's our marker. You can see it's right in there with that beautiful green background image in there. The two different tags that I selected, automatically they're incorporated into the tag cloud up there. And now because I'm the person that actually put that marker on the map, I own that marker, nobody else owns it. So what I can actually do is I can move it if I want to. I can edit it, which will run me back through that set of wizard steps, or I can just delete it. So I'm going to delete it. Bam. Do I really want to delete this? Yes, it's gone. So sometimes people ask us questions, hey, but what if you've got like inappropriate content, or what about these sorts of things? So we've got this little button down here as well. So if you see a marker that might be wrong or a marker that might be offensive, you basically can click on this reported marker. It'll open up another small page which will say, well, what's the color of the marker, the title of that marker. Got to make sure you're a human being, so you've got to type in these two numbers, we submit it, and then what will happen is it'll send an email directly to the administrator, Karen, and then she will remove that marker straight away. So that is how the map works. It's, as Sean pointed out, like a very sort of customized version of a mapping tool that we've created in the past, but we've tried to make it as visual as possible with a number of straightforward steps as possible, so in order to ensure that as many people can use this tool in as easy a way as possible. And I think that's all I have to say.
All right, well, thanks, John. I'm going to turn it back to Rochelle here, who's going to speak through some of the findings from the research component of the pilot project. You there, Rochelle?
You're going to share, yeah, you're going to share your screen, right, Sean?
That's right. Can you see it now?
No.
I'm just, okay. Sorry, technical difficulties on my end. I am now sharing my screen. Thanks.
Okay. So this project is, as we've all kind of alluded to, has been a real exciting project to be involved in and to work alongside of these partners. And when we began to look at all of these stories, one of the things that we found is that there was a huge diversity in terms of the types of jobs that self-advocates were doing in the stories that they were adding to the map. Their positions and employ work in retail, food and beverage services, employed at banks, law firms, a newspaper, a brewery. One self-advocate worked with the Connect Sports and Entertainment. So there's a huge scope of work that is being done by self-advocates in British Columbia, and really very impressive. One of the other interesting things just about kind of who these self-advocates are, the stories that currently exist on the map, is it was really impressive to see the longevity of how long some of the self-advocates have been working at their place of employment. So in fact, there were 6 self-advocates who have been at their place of employment for 10 or more years, and 4 self-advocates that had been at their place of employment for more than 20 years. So really, really interesting kind of to learn from the self-advocate stories about the kinds of work and the quality of the work that they were doing. So when it comes to kind of what we've learned from the stories that were shared on the map, we've learned about the benefits of work to self-advocates, but also the benefits of employment from employers' perspectives as well. People told stories, in their stories they spoke about the role of supports and accommodations, that these were really key to successful and inclusive employment experiences. People shared stories and highlighted the importance of training and supports, both training at the beginning of their employment journey, but also ongoing training that would support them in professional development and expanding their role at the workplace. Another really key piece was the importance of flexibility and fit between the job and also the skills and interests of the self-advocate. And then finally, another kind of key thing that came up was the role of self-employment for self-advocates in the province. So I'm going to just go into those just a little bit more detail now. So can you go to the, yeah, there we go. So in particular, when we looked at stories that self-advocates shared, or stories that were uploaded from existing stories out there. One of the key things that self-advocates talked about was the benefits of employment from their perspective. And similar to the story that you heard from Dale earlier, they didn't necessarily highlight the fact of compensation or being paid. Of course, that was one piece of it, as you see kind of further down that list, that compensation and getting a real paycheck was an important piece for self-advocates. But one of the things that really was highlighted by self-advocates across the stories was the value and importance of the social relationships that they established through their experiences around employment. That was a really key thing that self-advocates spoke about, and kind of underscores what we were talking about earlier around the value of employment for promoting citizenship and social inclusion. Self-advocates talked about personal satisfaction, having a sense of accomplishment because of their opportunity for employment. They talked about different stories where they talked about new opportunities to learn new skills, taking on new tasks. They talked also beyond kind of employee-related skills. They talked about how being employed taught them social skills. And then finally, self-advocates really spoke about how being employed and having a positive employment experience really contributed to their sense of belonging. Next slide. When we looked at employers' narratives, some similar themes also came up. One of the really, I think, key strengths of the map is that employers talked about the benefits of hiring self-advocates. So they spoke about the value-added aspects of how hiring a self-advocate really enhances their own workplace. So they spoke about the characteristics of the individual, that self-advocates came and they were committed, that they made really positive contributions and added real efficiencies to the workplace. They talked about the positive influence on the work culture at their place of employment, and that hiring a self-advocate really contributed a sense of diversity in the workplace that they saw as a real value-added piece to hiring a self-advocate. And then one kind of last piece in terms of the benefit is they spoke about the rewards they got by giving back and including a self-advocate in the workplace. I think in terms of service providers, one key finding was that when employers talked about the hiring process, they really underscored that service providers played a key role in opening up the idea of hiring a self-advocate in the workplace. And so the key role of a service provider is really important in terms of promoting inclusive employment. Similar to self-advocates, the employers highlighted the social relationships that were fostered in the workplace and the contribution of that social relationship in getting to know the self-advocate. Another theme that came up were specifically around factors for success. They talked about the importance of partnerships. So again, the partnerships between service providers and the employer were really key to promoting a positive employment experience. Related to that, good communication, and the communication was both with service providers but also with the self-advocate. So making sure that there was good communication in terms of learning what the self-advocate needed so that they were able to provide the supports and flexibility that was important for success. And they also underscored the importance of learning about the specific skills that self-advocates brought to the workplace so that they could foster that fit in terms of their tasks and the self-advocate's abilities. Finally, and with respect to employers, all of the employers that added stories to the map emphasized that this was a really valuable thing to participate in hiring a self-advocate. They said, you know, it's really important to be open-minded, and that the principle of real work for real pay for real work, was really an important piece to make the employment experience a success. And when you look at the employer stories, just kind of to finish off, I think one of the really neat pieces about it is it really provides a tool to perhaps share these positive benefits from an employer's perspective as a way of recruiting other employers to hire self-advocates in the province. With respect to service provider themes, again, as the employers pointed out, the service providers were really key actors in contributing to the success of the employment experience. So when we spoke with service providers, they clearly pointed out that there were many benefits of employment to self-advocates in terms of their own personal development, obviously having a wage and a real paycheck. Those were all very positive things, but other things that they underscored was, from their perspective, that service providers need to be aware of their changing roles
Sorry, Rochelle, we just lost you for a second there. Can you repeat that last bit?
Oh. So one of the key points that service providers underscored was that they had to change, that their role changed and shifted over time during the self-advocate's employment journey. So in the beginning, they would be more involved, but one of their key points was that it was really important for service providers to build natural supports within the employee in the workplace, so that they could kind of transition themselves out and encourage and foster the independence of the self-advocate. So when employers talked about, when service providers talked about what were factors for successful employment, they talked about both the characteristics of the employer and the self-advocate. So there were unique personalities, abilities, characteristics that were key factors in terms of promoting successful employment. And related to that, service providers talked about, when you looked at those characteristics, it was really important that there was a good fit, that there was a match between both the supervisor and the employer as a person, the actual task or job description, as well as the self-advocate. So really understanding how to make that fit happen was a key to success from service providers' perspective. They underscored the importance and value of an employment plan. So working very closely with self-advocates around what service providers referred to as discovery. So what were their interests, what are their abilities, and making sure that there was a good understanding around the self-advocate's desire around employment, as well as what kinds of accommodations and supports were necessary. Again, service providers spoke about training and individualized support. Related to that was the importance of often a work context where there was flexibility to be able to offer those accommodations and supports. And finally, to make that all work, service providers underscored the importance of the relationship between service providers and the self-advocate, that if there wasn't a strong relationship between the service provider and self-advocate, it was really a challenge to meet the criteria that I just spoke about before. For example, finding a match in that discovery process, that really that relationship was central to ensuring that those things fell into place.
Thanks, Rochelle. That was a great overview, and really that was pretty high level, and we look forward to sharing the in-depth results from the study when we publish the final report. You'll be able to find that report on our website, and I believe Rochelle will be posting on the CIC website as well. So we encourage you to look, check out our website or our mailing list to find out when that gets published. This project's been a really exciting opportunity to engage in new partnerships, not only amongst us as the project partners, but also with self-advocates. I want to acknowledge the role of our steering committee. We've had some key stakeholders on that committee and self-advocates really helping guide the project, serving as a sounding board. A lot of the work that you saw presented by both Rochelle and John has been a reflection of a lot of input from a lot of different people. And we're really thrilled about how this has all transpired. Not only, we started with this very exciting technology, but working together have really built this tool, a tool that we're making available to the community to promote inclusive employment. For us at the center, the question is, where do we go from here? We're nearing the end of this research pilot, and the question is, how do we continue to sustain the map? And who would be responsible for doing that? And we're really engaged in a lot of conversations right now. We've been starting out by going out and doing presentations to various stakeholder groups to let people know about the map and encourage folks to continue to add stories. I think we're close to 100 stories on the map right now. My colleague Karen Lai has been working really hard to coordinate that effort and reach out to folks to do that. And if you're interested in learning more about that process and how we might be able to support you, feel free to email me at the end of this presentation. You'll see my email address there. We are also looking for opportunities now that we have these stories on the map to start using it as a way to engage stakeholders and promote inclusive employment. A big focus for us would be employers. We really think this is a great opportunity to demonstrate to employers giving them an opportunity to hear from their peers really about what are the benefits, some of the things that we saw emerge already from the research, and how powerful that can be to encourage further opportunities. And then finally, the question is about, our question for us is, how do we continue to sustain the map going forward? There's a cost, obviously, to keeping a technology like this up to date. We're always refining and developing it further, looking at other opportunities to make it even more accessible, working with our partners to figure out how they might want to use this tool to engage their own stakeholder communities. So if you have thoughts about that or any ideas, feel free to email me, and we can start that conversation and bring in others as needed. Please feel free to email me about that. One of the groups that has expressed interest and continue to support the map is Self-Advocate Net. Many of you are familiar with that organization and the great work that they do, and they'll be coming on as a partner, joining our steering committee and looking at how they can support the map going forward as well. We want to finish with a call to action. As you're sitting there thinking about what you might be able to do, we want you to think about these three options here. The first is obviously adding your stories to the map. The map is only as good as the stories that are added to it, and that's really the key feature here. So the more stories we have on the map, the richer the database, and the more opportunity we have to engage others. One of our goals over the next while is to have stories that cover the entire province, reaching out to every community so that self-advocates or employers or service providers, so they can look on the map and they can see stories within their own community there. We're also looking for champions. We're a small team here, and we have limited resources, and we would love for folks to take ownership of the map, promote it, and share it with their communities. It's the best way for us to reach out, find people who might have stories to share. We know there's a lot of them out there, and it really starts with other community members taking the lead and connecting with those folks. And finally, encouraging others to add their stories. Sometimes it's a bit of folks might be a bit hesitant to add their stories in such a public way. We're trying to provide a lot of different opportunities so that people can add their stories in the way that they feel most comfortable, whether that's by text or by video or audio. If there are any concerns about that, or if you want some ideas around that, there's some great training resources on the map on how to write a story, how to make it, how to structure it in a way that it's a benefit to users, and how basically how to add it to the map. So take a look at that and contact us if you have any questions about it. We do want to give an opportunity for any questions or discussion points that you might want to raise. Feel free to use that questions tab or raise your hand, and my colleague Greg here will unmute you so you can ask your question to the team. In the meantime, if you're thinking through any questions you might have, I'm just going to tell you about an upcoming webinar we have here at the center. It's going to be on FASD and employment, supporting with people with FASD on the job. The webinar is scheduled for August 11th. To register for the webinar, please sign up either for our mailing list where there will be an announcement, or you can go to our website, which you can see there for information, where we'll be posting the information in the upcoming weeks. Well, it looks like we don't have any questions right now, but I'm sure that there might be some percolating out there. So if you have any questions, I'll go right back to our email addresses. Feel free to email us. We'd love to have a chat with you. Find out from you about what interests you about the map, or what directions you think we can take it, or any questions you might have about using it either for yourself, your clients, or within your own community. On behalf of our presenters, I want to thank you very much for spending this hour with us today. We're really excited about sharing this with you. We look forward to publishing the results and engaging with you further, and we hope you have a great afternoon.